Everybody like and subscribe, praise the bell icon. Story number 1.
It was a warm summer night when a group of college friends decided to visit an amusement park on the outskirts of town. The park, although famous for its thrilling rides and old-time charm, had a reputation of being more haunted than most people realized. Locals spoke of strange occurrences and unexplainable sights that left visitors unsettled, but the group of friends paid no mind. They were looking for a fun night, a distraction from exams and the occasional thrill ride. As they entered the park, the gates creaked open, the metal groaning as though it hadn't been used in years. The lights flickered above them, casting long, eerie shadows over the empty paths. The park felt off, but they shrugged it off as normal, chalking it up to a quiet night. There were no lines for the rides, which only added to the strange ambiance, but they were happy not to wait. Their first stop was the Ferris wheel, towering over the park like a giant sentinel. As they climbed into the cars, they noticed that the wheel had an unusual musty smell, as if it hadn't been maintained in ages. The car they sat in felt rickety, creaking under their weight as it slowly started its ascent. The view from the top was spectacular at first, the sparkling city lights in the distance, the stillness of the night. But as they reached the peak, one of the friends, Matt, looked out across the park and noticed something strange. A figure standing still in the middle of a path, not moving, just staring. He pointed it out to the others, but when they turned to look, the figure was gone. No trace of anyone was visible down below. They laughed it off, saying it was probably just a trick of the light, or maybe some lingering park employee finishing their shift. But something didn't sit right with them. Next, they decided to try the haunted house. The outside was covered in layers of spider webs, the windows dark and cracked. The smell of damp wood and decay hit them as they entered, the air thick with mildew. It was a classic, run-down horror maze. Fake cobwebs, cobbled-together ghosts, and flickering lights. But as they moved deeper into the house, things began to feel real. The animatronics no longer seemed like just machines. They felt almost alive. A loud scream echoed from one of the rooms, and the friends jumped. But when they rushed forward to see where it came from, they found nothing. No other guests, no actors, just the thick, heavy silence of the place. The deeper they ventured, the more unsettling the atmosphere became. At one point, a cold draft swept through, chilling them to the bone despite the warm night air outside. Then came the whispers, low, almost unintelligible voices that seemed to come from all directions. It was as if the walls themselves were alive. And then, in a dark corner of the maze, they saw it. A mirror. In it, there was a reflection of a person who wasn't there. The figure in the mirror was pale, with hollow eyes, and wore an old amusement park uniform, one that hadn't been in style for decades. The reflection smiled at them, slowly and unnervingly, before it vanished. The friends, now thoroughly spooked, decided to leave, but as they turned to retrace their steps, the door they came through was gone. They were trapped. Panicked, they stumbled through the dark maze, the air growing colder and the whispers louder, until they found a doorway that led to an outdoor courtyard. They were on the edge of the park now, far from where they started. As they began to make their way back, they realized the park was eerily empty. All the usual noise and excitement had vanished. It was as if they were the only ones left. They found their way back to the main area, but the night had taken a strange turn. The once bright neon lights had dulled to a sickly yellow hue. One by one, they started to notice strange details, like how the rides were now silent, with no movement at all, or how the ground felt unnaturally soft beneath their feet, like they were walking on something, or someone. The final horror came when they decided to ride the roller coaster, the most iconic ride in the park. As they strapped in and the train slowly started its ascent, one of them noticed that the people in the cars ahead weren't moving. The riders looked frozen, their faces pale and locked in wide-eyed terror. When the train reached the top and began its descent, a loud crash sounded through the air. But the train did not fall. It hovered in place for several seconds before jerking downward violently, plunging them into darkness. The ride was over before it began. As the train coasted to a stop, they looked around, their hearts pounding. The riders in the other cars were gone. The park was silent once more, too quiet. They sprinted out, not stopping until they were safely outside the gates. Behind them, the park remained eerily still, as if it had never been alive in the first place. But the strangest part? The friends couldn't remember how they had ended up on the other side of the park. It was as if they had lost time. They never spoke of it again, but the nightmares followed. Each of them, separated by miles, saw the same thing: the ghostly figure in the mirror, grinning. And every time they would wake up with the feeling that something had followed them out of the park, something that wasn't quite human. And each year when the anniversary of that night passed, the park would quietly reopen, if only for a few hours, just long enough to remind those brave enough to enter, not everything that looks fun is.
Story number 2.
It was a family trip, the kind where everyone was excited for a day at the amusement park. Bright lights, cotton candy, and the sound of laughter filling the air. They drove for hours to reach the park, a sprawling, old-fashioned place tucked in the middle of nowhere. From the moment they arrived, something felt a bit off, but the parents brushed it aside, assuming it was just their nerves after the long drive. The kids ran ahead, eager to explore the rides. As they entered, the smell of stale popcorn and greasy fast food hit them. The air was thick with the sound of distant screams, those of joy perhaps, but also something else, something deeper, a faint hint of fear that seemed to linger beneath the laughter. It was nearly closing time, but the park was still bustling with people. The sky was turning an ominous shade of purple, and a strange mist started rolling in from the edges of the park, making everything look blurry and unreal. The family made their way toward the main ride, an old wooden roller coaster that had been there for as long as anyone could remember. The line was short, with only a few people ahead of them. As they waited, they couldn't help but notice how odd the other riders seemed. Pale, eyes wide, not speaking. But there was something more unsettling. They seemed to be staring at the family, as though they knew something they didn't. When it was their turn to board, the family took their seats. The air felt colder now, the sky darker. As the coaster started its climb, they heard a strange scraping sound, like something moving in the gears. It was a noise they shouldn't have been hearing. The ride shouldn't have been moving so smoothly, not with the sound of the chains clanking like that. At the top, just before the thrilling drop, the lights on the ride flickered, and everything went dark for a split second. When the lights came back on, the coaster was still at the peak, but the world around them had changed. The park was gone, replaced by thick trees and a fog that made it impossible to see beyond a few feet. The ride jerked to a stop, and the family was left in complete silence. The only sound was the faint hum of something far off, a deep growl that seemed to vibrate through the air. The kids screamed for the ride to move again, but no one came. The operator booth at the base of the ride was dark, the operator nowhere in sight. They were alone, suspended in time. Suddenly, the sky split open with a crack of thunder, and the roller coaster began moving again, this time at an unnatural speed. As they zoomed down the track, something moved through the fog, keeping pace with the coaster. Figures, blurry and tall, with long arms and elongated faces, appeared in the mist. They ran alongside the ride, keeping up with the terrifying pace, their hollow eyes following the family's every move. The coaster reached the final loop, and the family braced for the end. But instead of stopping, it continued, rushing into a dark tunnel that seemed to stretch on forever. Inside, the walls were covered in old peeling paint, and the air smelled of mildew and decay. The ride jolted to a halt again, this time in total darkness. The family sat frozen, hearts racing, unsure of what was happening. Then a voice, soft, almost a whisper, came through the speakers. It was faint but clear. "You're not supposed to leave." The ride started again, but this time it didn't feel like a ride at all. It felt like a chase. They were being hunted. Suddenly, everything stopped and the mist cleared. The family found themselves at the same entrance they had come through, but the park was empty. No lights, no noise, just the stillness of the fog creeping in. The gates to the park, which had been open just moments before, were now closed and locked, the sign reading, "Closed for the season." The family tried to call for help, but their phones had no signal. They looked around, but there was no one to be found. The park, which had felt so alive with people just moments before, now felt like an abandoned ghost town. The sound of faint laughter echoed in the distance, but it was no longer filled with joy. It was distant, mocking. With no other choice, they began to walk toward the exit, their footsteps heavy with the weight of the unknown. As they passed the old rides, they noticed something strange. Each ride seemed to be frozen in time. The bumper cars, the Ferris wheel, the carousel, all were empty, and yet the faint sounds of their mechanical movements played in the air, as if still running, still alive. The family reached the gates, and as they pushed them open, they saw the figure standing there. A man dressed in the old uniform of the park, eyes wide open, staring at them. "You were never meant to leave," he whispered. And with that, the gate slammed shut behind them, trapping them in the fog. No one ever saw the family again, and the amusement park once again remained abandoned until the next season when the gates creaked open as if waiting for new visitors to discover its dark secret.
Story number 3.
A group of friends, excited for their annual trip to the old amusement park, made their way there one chilly autumn evening. The park had been around for decades, always maintaining a sense of nostalgia for those who returned year after year. This particular night, however, felt different. The clouds hung low in the sky, casting a dim glow over the park. The air was crisp, but there was something about the atmosphere that felt unnatural, like the park itself was holding its breath. The group started off with a few rounds on the bumper cars, laughing and joking, but they noticed that the park seemed unusually quiet. There were no long lines, no families bustling through the gates, just a handful of other guests here and there, their faces obscured by shadows. No one was smiling. Most of the rides were empty, and the sounds of the park, laughter, music, the hum of machinery, felt muted, almost swallowed by the thick air. One of the friends, Sarah, suggested they try the haunted house. It was a popular attraction, but it had a reputation for being more than just a spooky thrill ride. Over the years, rumors had swirled that the house wasn't just filled with actors and special effects. Some claimed it was haunted for real. Sarah laughed at the thought, but curiosity won out. They headed toward the entrance. The facade of the haunted house was as grotesque as always, with twisting, gnarled trees surrounding the entrance and a weathered sign that read, "Enter if you dare." The group hesitated at first, but decided to push forward. As they crossed the threshold, the door slammed shut behind them with an almost deafening crash. The room went pitch black, and a low, unsettling hum filled the space. "Must be part of the show," Mark said nervously, trying to make light of the situation. They stumbled forward, hands outstretched, but the floor beneath them felt wrong, uneven, as if it were shifting. They felt the walls close in, their claustrophobia mounting with every step. Then suddenly, they found themselves in a dimly lit hallway. The walls were lined with old portraits, their eyes following the group as they moved past. The lights flickered, casting twisted shadows on the faces in the pictures. "Let's just get through this," Lisa whispered, her voice tight with unease. As they reached a corner, they heard a loud bang from behind them. They turned to find nothing, but the tension was building now, palpable. The air felt thick and heavy, and something seemed to brush against them from time to time. But whenever they looked around, no one was there. They rounded another corner, only to be met with the sight of a mirror. A large, cracked one that covered the entire wall. As they peered into it, they saw their reflections, not exactly as they were. The faces in the mirror appeared distorted, stretched, and twisted, their eyes bulging out of their skulls. Some of the reflections grinned grotesquely, others just stared blankly, frozen in time. The friends recoiled in horror, stepping back, but the mirror didn't stop reflecting their twisted images, no matter where they moved. Suddenly, a figure appeared in the mirror, one that wasn't part of their group. It was a man, tall and thin, with a face that was smooth, featureless, like a blank canvas. His eyes were wide open, black as coal. He reached out, his hand brushing the surface of the glass, and then he stepped through. The figure was now standing in the hallway with them. The friends froze. The man didn't speak. He simply stood there, unmoving, his black eyes scanning each of them. They tried to run, but the hallway seemed to stretch out endlessly. The walls shifted, blocking their path. The air was suffocating. Sarah screamed, but her voice was muffled, swallowed by the eerie silence that filled the house. Mark grabbed her arm, pulling her forward, desperate to escape. But as they moved down the hall, they noticed something worse. The house was alive. The walls pulsed. The floor beneath them seemed to shift and breathe, like something massive was stirring beneath the surface. They heard whispers now, low, guttural voices that seemed to come from everywhere. The temperature dropped, and Sarah's breath turned to mist in front of her face. They stumbled into another room, and in the dim light, they saw what looked like a stage. Old, tattered curtains hung from the walls, and a spotlight illuminated a figure at the center. It was an actor in costume, covered in fake blood, standing motionless. But the closer they got, the more they realized this wasn't part of the show. The figure was frozen in place, its face pale and lifeless, with a horrific grin stretched across its face. Blood oozed from its eyes and mouth, and the smell of decay hung in the air. Then the floor beneath them cracked open, and the man, the one from the mirror, emerged from the ground, his black eyes glinting with malevolent intent. The friends turned to run, but the doors they'd come through were now gone. Instead, there was just an endless corridor, stretching into nothingness. The whispers grew louder, surrounding them. They tried to scream, but their voices were lost in the oppressive silence. And then, everything went dark. The next morning, the park opened for the new day. The staff unlocked the gates, the sounds of laughter and excitement slowly returning. But there was no sign of Sarah, Mark, Lisa, or the others. Their disappearance was chalked up to them leaving early, deciding to go somewhere else, or maybe just getting lost in the crowd. But late at night, when the park is empty, the employees talk about strange things they hear, soft whispers in the hallways of the haunted house, and sometimes they swear they see shadows moving in the mirrors. The house is still there, open for business, but no one dares to stay too long, because some parts of the park are not meant to be found.